They fired her. Just like that. One of the most powerful law enforcement officials in America, gone. And before the news cycle even caught its breath, South Park swooped in and did what South Park always does. They turned it into a masterpiece of savage, unfiltered comedy. Pam Bondi's exit from the Attorney General's seat wasn't just political drama. It was the kind of story that writes itself. Power, controversy, a very public unraveling. And then Trey Parker and Matt Stone got their hands on it. We're going to show you exactly how South Park pulled this off, and why the internet is absolutely losing it over one specific scene. Stay with me. This video breaks down the moment, the context, the reaction, and the deeper reason why South Park keeps landing punches that nobody else in entertainment dares to throw. We've got all of it. If you haven't been following, here's the 30-second version. Pam Bondi, Florida Attorney General, Trump impeachment defender, and one of the most polarizing figures to ever take the reins at the Department of Justice. Her tenure was, let's call it, turbulent. Critics said she was too loyal to the administration. Supporters said she was being unfairly targeted. Either way, the moment the firing news broke, social media erupted instantly. But here's what nobody was ready for. The South Park response came faster than anyone expected. And it hit different. Let's walk through what actually happened. Reports of her departure started circulating. Anonymous sources, contradictory statements, the usual Washington fog machine. Was she pushed? Did she resign? Was there a blow-up behind closed doors? What we know, it was messy, it was public, and it gave Trey Parker and Matt Stone exactly the kind of real-world chaos they've been mining for 30 years. And trust me, what South Park did with this story is going to make you see the entire situation in a completely different way. Now, before we get into the moment, some context, because South Park doesn't just punch, South Park predicts. They turned Mr. Garrison into a Trump stand-in back in 2015 and spent years proving they understood the political landscape better than most actual journalists. They've torched celebrities, skewered politicians, and lampooned entire cultural movements with surgical precision. So when they put Pam Bondi in their crosshairs, you know it's going to leave a mark. Okay, here we go. This is the part you came for. The episode that had Twitter, X, absolutely on fire within minutes of airing. And if you know South Park, you know they don't waste screen time. Every single second is intentional. The scene I'm about to describe is only about 90 seconds long, but what happens in those 90 seconds is going to stick with you. Let me paint the picture. Picture this. Randy Marsh, absolute legend of chaotic American dad energy, sitting at the kitchen table watching the news. The anchor announces Bondi's exit. Randy just stares. Then he turns to Sharon and goes, "Sharon, I think we need to talk about the concept of consequences. Randy, you literally got a DUI last week and blamed it on being gluten-free. That is completely different and you know it. It's a 10-second exchange. But the implication that the people most eager to talk about accountability are often the least equipped to model it lands like a freight train. Maximum payload, minimum words. Classic SP. But the Randy scene isn't even the most brutal part of the episode. What comes next had the internet posting frame-by-frame breakdowns at 2 in the morning. Enter Eric Cartman. And if you know this show, you know Cartman isn't used for gentle observations. When Matt and Trey deploy Cartman, they are loading the nuclear option. Cartman appears wearing a tiny blazer, clearly evoking legal authority. He's standing at a podium. He clears his throat dramatically and announces, "Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to report that I have investigated myself and found absolutely nothing wrong. The investigation was very thorough. I looked everywhere, especially in places that definitely did not need looking at." Meaningful pause. You're welcome, America. The parallel is not subtle. It is not meant to be subtle. But what makes it brilliant is the economy. In 40 words, they've summed up an entire political era's relationship with self-investigation. And here's the kicker. The moment that made even people who defend Bondi admit the show made a fair point. It's coming up right after this. Kyle, who in South Park mythology almost always represents the voice of exhausted reason, gets the final line of the segment. He looks directly into the camera and says, "I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. When someone acts like the rules don't apply to them, it's not politics anymore. It's just sad." And that's the genius. Kyle's earnestness is played as naive, but the audience hears it as the most truthful thing said in the whole episode. South Park lets you feel both at once. That's not an accident. The internet had approximately 3 minutes to process before the clips started spreading, and here's what made this interesting. The reaction wasn't one-sided. You had the obvious crowd celebrating, but you also had people on the other side of the aisle quietly sharing the clip. One prominent conservative commentator, I'm not going to name names because that's not the point, quote tweeted the Cartman clip and wrote, "I hate that this is funny." 4 words. That 4-word response told you everything. When your critics and your supporters are laughing uncomfortably, satire has done its job. But there was another reaction from someone much closer to the story, and their response turned this from a viral moment into a full-blown cultural event. Cable news took the bait, as cable news always does. One network ran a segment asking whether South Park's political humor had gone too far. Another panel debated whether animated satire was appropriate for real political figures. And if you've watched South Park for any length of time, you know there is no better advertisement for an episode than a panel of serious adults on television debating whether it should exist. They did it with Tom Cruise. They did it with Muhammad. They're doing it with Pam Bondi now. Trey and Matt are loving this. Here's what none of those panels mentioned. And it's the context that completely changes how you should read this entire episode. South Park has a rule, stated plainly by Matt Stone in multiple interviews, that they go after everyone equally. Democrats, Republicans, celebrities, the media itself. They've roasted Obama, Clinton, Bush, Trump for multiple seasons. So when they point the cannon at Bondi, it's not partisan, it's consistent. The formula: take the person, find the most uncomfortable truth about the situation, strip away all the protective language, and have a 10-year-old say it out loud. That's it. And it works every single time. Here's the bigger picture, and stay with me because this is worth thinking about. Political satire has always done something that journalism and punditry cannot. It makes you feel the absurdity, not just understand it intellectually. When you read a 3,000-word op-ed about accountability in government, your brain processes it. But when Cartman stands at a podium and announces he's investigated himself and found nothing, your gut reacts before your brain even catches up. That involuntary laugh. That's satire doing its highest level work. And there's one more layer to this episode that almost nobody has talked about yet. It changes the entire meaning of the Cartman scene. Look closely at the background of the Cartman podium scene. In the crowd, visible for maybe 2 seconds, there's a sign. It reads, "I also investigated myself and am fine," carried by a generic background character. That sign isn't about Bondi. That sign is about all of us. The people who hear about a scandal and think, well, they said they didn't do it, so. South Park isn't just roasting one person. They're holding a mirror up to the whole culture that makes these stories possible. That's the difference between a joke and a statement. South Park made a statement. Cartman was just the delivery mechanism. Remember that Cartman clip we opened with, where he's pointing and laughing? Here's the thing about that image. In context, Cartman is pointing at a newspaper headline. The headline reads, and I want you to really let this land, "Local man surprised to learn actions have consequences." South Park has been making that joke for 27 seasons. The names change, the faces change, the scandals change, but the core joke, that powerful people are perpetually shocked when accountability arrives, never gets old because the situation never changes. Pam Bondi is the latest chapter. She won't be the last, and when the next one comes along, Trey Parker and Matt Stone will be there, pencils sharpened, absolutely ready to make us laugh at something that probably shouldn't be funny. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with one question that I genuinely don't have an answer to. Sit with this one. At what point does satire stop being a coping mechanism and start being a replacement for actual accountability? Like, if we can all just laugh at the Cartman version of a thing, does that make us feel like something was done about it, even when nothing was? South Park has never answered that question. I think that's intentional, because the moment they answer it, they stop being South Park and start being a lecture, and nobody's watching a lecture for 27 seasons. I'll let you sit with that one. If this video gave you something to think about, or at least made you laugh, hit that subscribe button, because we break down the moments the internet is talking about before the conversation moves on. Drop your take in the comments. Did South Park go too far, or not far enough? I genuinely want to know. I'll see you in the next one.